Hey, it's the Chief Bonding with Board Games. Hey, we're going to get into this HAMTAG show about games from America in a second. But if you're interested in supporting the show, helping to keep the show running, please either skip to the end at some point in time or tune in all the way to the end. And there'll be some Patreon information on how you can support Bonding with Board Games if you choose to. Enjoy this HAMTAG show.
All right.
Hey, it's Bonding with Board Games. It's HAMTAG.
HAMTAG, we're back. We're here.
Woo! Now, we're doing our top 5 American games. Right? America. Just America. So
America.
say America.
Leave off
How do you
the
say
A.
it?
I say America.
He's a fob.
He says
dandy.
America.
He's a dandy.
He's America.
He's a dandy.
That's right.
Foreigner or something.
So it's American games, and I believe we left this fairly vague on purpose.
Right.
Yeah, we always do.
So
we don't come
yeah.
up with a, let's do it and keep it within these
It
confines.
must be between,
Right,
the
the one we did on non-card games.
Yeah.
No cards, no
I'm
Mark
still
Herman
flamed
version.
over that.
Right.
That's right. Big part of the fun. So that's what we're going to learn here is how we framed America and what games are on it. Why don't you
You
start?
start.
Want me to go?
Yeah,
Okay.
you haven't started for
Which one are you going to left or right?
You know, we could. No, we'll just.
keep
We
going
could
this
just
way.
pop it different every. No, I'm just kidding. We'll go to Greg and then we'll roll over my head to
Okay.
you and we'll just run down
All
the
right.
line. How's that?
Great.
All right, number 5. Part of my deal before I say the name is I kind of wanted to roll in what I'm going to call chronological order.
Okay.
So in this list,
Okay.
it's not necessarily
I like
that
it.
this is not as good as, but we're going to go in order, and I put Founding Fathers down on.
Okay.
Christian Leonard, if I say it right, Leonard, and Jason Leonard, and Jason Matthews. 2010 it came out. I own this, but I believe I played it with you for the very first time.
Better flash a picture because there's 2 Founding Fathers games out.
Okay.
Right.
You know what? I'll do better than flash a picture. I should have reached. I got a little excited and forgot to reach. So, Founding Fathers. All right. This is Jolly Roger Games. And you are... Yep, and I should even pull it down. It's the your
The
Continental
Constitution.
Congress.
The Constitutional Convention.
Right, the Constitutional Convention. You're trying to pass different parts of the Constitution. You're working between Federalists, Anti-Federalists, big state, small state.
Right.
There's
Those are the main 4.
Right, there's the main room going on where you've got cards and you're coming down on the sides of the issue. There's also areas where you're in debate, and there's one other part of the. Is there another part of the board? I'm
There's an
forgetting?
assembly room that after
like the pre.
right.
In the back.
Or the
So
post.
you're the committee room. In the assembly room, you're working on the wording of the Constitution, and the way it ended up being worded might favor one faction or the other. Whether the president has a 4-year term or whether he is president for life. And you're going on different clauses of the Constitution to decide that. In one section, you are voting in your state groups. Rhode Island is recommending this word is in favor of this wording, whereas Massachusetts is in favor of that wording.
Yeah.
When that gets resolved, some of the delegates will get moved into the committee room, and then in committee, rather than with the whole group, what happened thematically, they would decide, and now for this next clause, we think it should be that the Senate is elected this way versus that way. Part of it is always what was historical, but the other one isn't. And then in the background is when you're debating, well, I think that, we small states need to have equal rights with you people, whereas the large states were saying, we've got more people, we should be able to say what goes on here, which is a basic argument that ended up in the 2 houses of Congress. And it's just trying to get points based on getting the Constitution your way.
Yep. And it doesn't always play out the way the real Constitution played out. It pieces together.
Easily half of it ends up being different.
Right. And your delegates are the actual delegates with their photos or portraits or whatever they
The ones who had them.
The ones who had them, and they have specific things on their cards that allow them to do special things that can kind of tweak.
That kind of reflect what they did historically. But there are 55 cards in the deck, just like there were 55 people who showed up at various times at the convention.
It's a very, very neat game. It's extremely educational in terms of how government functioned and how they were intertwined and battling each other and how things worked out.
And how important the states were in the birth of the country.
Yes.
Because you're voting, and you might have, for instance, Alexander Hamilton might be in favor of a particular measure, but the other representatives from New York oppose it, so they can override him, and his vote goes away.
Yeah, it is fantastic. So that is my number 5, and it's just because I'm building toward the future.
There's 2 things on this I'll add. One is Greg has the ultimate player aid for this to teach people, and if you're new to it. Is it on BGG in the files?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Get it. It's priceless. Second thing is, I think people
free.
know by now, I'm not a real big Eurogamer, and I generally don't seek them out. Ooh, I just really want to get a game of ticket to ride tonight at game night. I'll probably just try and go back home and rather play solitaire. That is one of the 3 I like to get into games on.
See, do you
That's
really
pretty high.
think
That's high
that's
praise.
a Euro game?
Yes, you're matching
So you
tokens
think
and
so?
stuff. The theme is pretty. Okay, I'll say it up front. When I did my 5, I'm not skipping you, Greg.
No, that's fine.
no.
You go ahead and go next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're fine.
Yeah, when I did this, I struggled with how to do this. And I finally came down and I picked out 5 important historical events in America. From there, I picked out the best game I had on that. And then I ranked them from best to least in the game. Not in the importance of historical, but that's how I went.
Okay.
And I wanted the games to focus more on the simulation, not as much of the what if. If it had a what if, that's cool. But I wanted it to be able to where you can get down and learn the history from the game and help aid in that. I considered Founding Fathers until I got down to it, and I've always said it's a blast to play, but you're really matching tokens and matching symbols and collecting tokens. And part of it is they kept no minutes in the Constitutional Convention on purpose, so we don't know how it shook out. And I always felt there's this Darth Sidious thing going on, mixing my metaphor, but like you're the overlord and you're making a bet with the other. I bet I can get these guys to swing my way, because you might start off as Madison, who wanted such a strong federal government. He originally wrote it to where the federal government could strike down state laws. That's how strong. But if you have him, you might end up having a bunch of delegates that go for the state's sovereignty over the federal, and you'll play those. So it's like, and it's not really he had influence.
And Madison, the way he is portrayed in the game, can support any position in debate, and actually can vote for any position. And you're right, that is a historical.
And it's not bad. I mean, if you tried to make one, if we had minutes and you made a game, it'd be dull. So it's a fun game. Like I said, this is high praise when I say I actually look forward. There's nights I go to games like, man, I really hope Greg got a game of this going on because I want to play it.
Well,
but
okay.
I went for sim factor, so that's why it's not on my list.
Then let me throw this out. Because some people have mentioned once in a while that we should do a game instead of reviews. That might be a good one to do.
Yeah, because it almost made my list and it made yours.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's.
And we don't know if it's on my list.
don't know.
I haven't seen nothing. So, and I'm all Soviet state secrets with my stuff hidden.
Yeah, I
in the
noticed.
clothes.
Yeah, you have stuff over it.
I'm like Bill
You don't want
Belichick.
to. Well, I spun off
right.
in a past one that it was on your list, and I
All right,
totally
but-
ruined your experience.
So what is your number 5?
My
Yeah,
number
you're fine.
4
Oh, you're-
is my 5.
Yeah.
American Revolution, which extremely important. You don't have an America without an American Revolution. You don't have a constitution. You don't break apart from England if you don't win on the war. The turning point of the war, Saratoga, GMT Games. The first edition came out in '98. There was a second edition put out later. It is the first of 8 games in the Battles of the American Revolution series of games. This was designed by Mark, I think it's Miklos. I don't know. Okay. I can't pronounce Borodino, so I'm probably butchering his name pretty bad. Okay, badly. Okay. Anyway, this battle was so important. Strategically, the British are trying to cut off the Hudson Corridor and divide and conquer, saying the core of the revolution is in New England. We're going to cut them off. England never got what the American Revolution is about. Even if they succeeded, they would have failed, I believe. We don't know. But they got stopped. And we captured Jeff Burgoyne's 6,000 troops there. Huge boost to morale for the country. More importantly, it brought France into the war. France brought ships. No French ships, no Yorktown. You don't bottle them up. They supported our economy, which almost collapsed despite their support. They sent over Rochambeau and his troops, which the British didn't give the proper respect at times to Washington, but they sure as heck respected Rochambeau. And I probably butchered his name too. So this is a great game on it. This was, when I played this thing, I went to Saratoga. I mean, first I saw Saratoga around 04, so we were up in New England, 05, and I didn't know anything about it hardly. And it was kind of raining, the park was closed, so I'd hop out, and my wife and baby was in the car, and I just kind of hop out and read the sign and tell them, it's like, some dude's farm, and they set up something here. And then I got to go back up. My company sent me up to New York, and I got to go over to Saratoga. And I'm like, I'm on Freeman's farm. I'm on Bemis Heights. I'm taking pictures. I'm about to roll around the ground. I'm so happy.
And it's not raining.
Yes, it's not raining. And, I just geek out so hard. I have a little blog thing on
The baby was now a toddler.
Yes. But it's like, I'm on where history changed. Monarchy died because of this war in America. Okay. Anyways, but the cool thing was the second time I got there early enough, I was able to talk to the park ranger, and I'm asking him specific questions about the thing. And he's like, "Wow, you really know this battle."
That was the second restraining order.
Yeah. No, he goes, and he's like, "You really know this battle?" And I said, "Well, I played a war game." He goes, "A game? There's a game on?" I said, "Yeah." Well, I didn't have a smartphone at the time to show him what it was. So, and this was like 3 years after I'd played the game. I could still see the map in my head. And this game doesn't hem you into, you must do this and this. You will see real quick, if you try to go through the rough terrain, you're not going to get anywhere. You got to take the paths. The paths are very limited. And that's why Benedict Arnold wanted to go down and cut him off with Morgan and he's on the Dearborn's group. They went down there and was trying to hit the choke points to slow them down, and Gates, meanwhile, is dragging his feet on it. This game has some variability in that there's a die roll to determine at a certain point if Gates is going to release the wing to come down and help you. The system is really slick. It works. It was originally created for this game, so I think it works the best for this game. I think Monmouth's the better game in the series, and Germantown, but this is, the only bummer is, after you might get 5 plays out of it, and it's kind of like, well, I've kind of seen, I've went down this route, I tried these routes. There's just only so many ways to play it. So if you're one of those guys that I gotta play $1 per play or my game's not a good value, it's not for you. But if you really want to get in the history of Saratoga, it is a great one. Also, if you want to know some more about the history of Saratoga, Richard Ketchum, reading it now.
Oh my gosh.
Great book, not finished, but I know how it ends. So anyways, really enjoying it. If you want good history, I got this at Saratoga at the site. So anyways, if you want some good background reading, a book I'd recommend. So that is, first and second edition. Let me talk about that real quick. This is the first edition. The second edition added a few more counters, and I believe it added some scenarios. I've been kind of curious to see what it's about. The first edition's fine. When the second edition came out, people sold off the first and drove it down. GMT just came out with the tri-pack. We're in October, we're filming this. It just started shipping this month. It is the first 3 games, Saratoga, Brandywine, and Guilford. So with people getting that, the reason why is because Brandywine and Guilford were really, really hard to get. They were on the P500 for like 10 years before they did this. That means guys who have Saratoga and wanted to upgrade are probably dumping off their copies. So watch the pay it forwards. And you could, right now they're on like 20 to 40 bucks on the marketplace. It's probably going to drive the price down. But if you get the first edition, you're fine. It's great. I don't know if the second's offered much more. But very, very obtainable.
A little bit of market economics going on.
Oh yeah, always look for that when a new edition comes out. People will be dumping off their older ones when they upgrade.
That is true.
So.
Okay, so I really didn't have any unifying theme for how I picked my games, because when we talked about games in America, I considered, let's have Stratomatic baseball, that, and we might think about doing a sports sports game. I know it may not appeal to our usual audience, but that could be kind of interesting. Which one of the baseball games is the best?
Well, we did do the sports one.
We did a
sports
top
one,
sports.
HAMTAG. Are you
Back
talking
in the
about
day?
us playing together? Yeah,
No.
way back.
Yeah, Stratomatic Baseball made mine.
Because I had
It's a blur.
title bout in there.
It's a blur.
Yes.
Or anyway, so my number 5 is Twilight Struggle. Twilight Struggle, I picked this. This is a card-driven game on the Cold War between the U.S. You know, there's a lot of talk, is this on Board Game Geek, is this a war game or not? But it is a struggle game, you know, and it's a struggle. It's about the American century. You know, the Cold War is really one of the key things that dominated the last half of the 20th century. This is such a good game. I checked, I had to find out, this was #1 game on Board Game Geek for 5 years, from 2011 to 2016. It's, again, like I said, a card-driven game. You know, you either place influence throughout the world, or you have the events, which are the historical events. You know, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Castro taking over in Cuba, shooting down KAL 007, the real things, the Berlin blockade, the real big things that happened back then. And it's once you learn the game, it's very tense. It's easy to get, if you don't know the game, and especially if you're playing somebody who does, it's easy to get swarmed too quick because, and I know I've mentioned this, more than any other game, I feel that this one is really sensitive to knowing the deck. The example we were talking about before is the card for Charles de Gaulle. If you don't know that card is in the deck and you're trying to do things in France, you're going to get messed over unless you do the right thing. So knowing the deck is important, but you're going to get a lot more play on it because besides the board version, more than many of the games we're talking about, there's an electronic online version that Playdeck has put out that is really a good, nice, slick working interface. So and you can play it solitaire too, so you can get good at it. You can learn the deck. So Twilight Struggle is my number 5 game about America.
Question for
Great
you,
choice.
because you know that deck. Is Nazar a card in there?
Yes.
Okay. I just got across Suez here recently and wanted to learn the background of that. So I was watching these YouTube videos on the Arab-Israeli conflicts, and I saw Nazar and go, he's a card! I think it's in Twilight Struggle.
Right. In the early war. Yep.
All right, because of 1812, and I've jammed all these together, even though some are going to be like 1754.
Cheater.
Yeah. Or you got 1775, but again, because of 1812, I put it after. All right, this is the Birth of America series. This is Bo Beckett. Is it Joseph Stahl? Jeff Stahl. This system that Academy Games put out has, first of all, production value done by Uwe at Academy Games is phenomenal. This type of war game, I'm just going to tell you right up front, is light and right up my alley. What you're able to do is you can play 2-player, you can add in a 3rd player, 4th player, because what they have is 4 factions, and they have cards for each faction. They have set dice that are limited. It's usually one faction has 3, another faction has 2, and you're playing on the same side, and the other faction has something. You have maybe some Native Americans, and all of these in different ways are tweaked just a little bit. 1812 is more about maneuver. 1775 is more about almost combat. The Brits are jumping right into different colonies, and you're just at each other's throat. And 1754 is more about how the Native Americans will switch sides on you real quick, and you got to kind of pay attention to what's going on because suddenly, whoop, they're gone. But it's very simple in terms of play a card, allows you to move a certain amount of your armies, which are just different groups of cubes that are in different areas, and then how far can you move them, and then you're going to resolve combat with the defender rolling first, and then the attacker, and They can run, and the dice are pre-programmed, so some units run much easier, some fight much harder. The typical red coat doesn't flee from battle. So, and it's just so easy to get new folks into. Light, fun, historical, and I've stacked them all together because if you know one system, you just got to go in and learn kind of the special rules with the next one, and very American.
How do you rank them?
What do you mean?
Best, which is your best, second
Oh,
best?
which one I like best? I like 1775 the best. 1812 is real heavy on maneuver. 1775, I feel obviously England can just pop in because of their shipping and threaten you in all different kinds of locations. And I really found it felt a lot more like a brawl.
I liked it, but I haven't played the French and Anti-War one. I was just curious. I liked 1775 better too.
They've got a Vikings version that's coming out. It looks like they're going to do some kind of trilogy of I don't know if it'll be the birth of Europe, but it's based in Europe. The other thing I didn't cover is your turn order is always random. You're reaching into a bag, pulling out a colored cube, and that sets who goes first, second, third, fourth. Greg had mentioned in passing once that he'd heard that some people say whoever goes last oftentimes can swing that to their victory. And I actually, as I looked at it, and even as I played the Viking ones, although they do have some instant win stuff going on in the Vikings one, I do think that is a strong factor. I think going last is big. The issue would be if your treaty cards, because you have treaty cards that can signify that the game can end if either faction has played both treaty cards. So if I know, it looks like, Judd, if obviously he goes last and has that treaty card to play, I've got to punch him in the face now. And where the game really has a interesting flow is, if he's driving my decision based on the fact that he may have that treaty card, and I have to step away from maybe what my plans are in order to make sure he doesn't have some key areas, or hopefully can't get those key areas, now I'm stuck kind of in his sphere where I'm having to react to you on my turn rather than flipping that around.
Okay.
And I think that's where some of the depth comes in. But that's my number 4 out of order on my system. I realized looking at it, I'm like, why do I not have that if I'm going chronological? So Birth of America. Okay. Birth of America.
Right. Okay, my number 4 involves an American Revolution. If you're not familiar with it, after the shot heard around the world, British ran back to Boston, put a siege there. They left, regrouped at Halifax, hit New York, hit them hard. Washington's army started 20,000 between the British and smallpox. They got drove down to 6,000 as they were going across the state of New Jersey, got drove out of there. And that was total bodies, not necessarily healthy, ready to fight bodies. It was going very badly. They thought an attack on Philadelphia was imminent. The worst part was this is December, and at the end of the month, a lot of their enlistments are up. And who wants to fight on a hopeless side? And he needed to do something to get people's hopes. And if you're familiar, Thomas Paine wrote The Crisis. These are the times that try men's souls. So he comes up with the attack on Trenton and Princeton, crosses the Delaware, pulls off a couple of stunning skirmishes that most importantly get the hopes of the country up. Yes, Saratoga was the turning point, but you could make a great argument that Trenton was the most important American battle. You could also make an argument that New York was the most critical British battle because the only way they were going to win was to destroy the American army, and that was their chance. Anyway, my number 4 game covers that. That's the history behind it. That's why it's so important. It is Washington's Crossing by Revolution Games. Roger Miller designed it, 2012. It says it's based on a Kevin Zucker system. This is not a game for a casual gamer. Want a good book? People Talk 1776. It's a good book, but it covers the growth of Washington from 1775 to the end, about the man, not necessarily the battle. It's kind of weak in that. Washington's Crossing by David Hackett Fisher won the Pulitzer Prize. Starts at New York and goes through that, covers all the sides. British, the Hessians, the Americans, lots of detail, great stuff. If you read this, if you love this level of history, you will adore this game. If you're a casual gamer, you will probably find it fiddly. Reasons why it's fiddly, you have tracks with the generals and the tracks troop numbers. They're numbers of tens, but it might be 1,320 with 3 markers. Reason you have that's because when you cross the Delaware, it's not, oh, I rolled, oh, good, I got my whole counter across. It might say you get 800 guys across, and you have 1,000. So you take your general, 800 go, 200 stay. You have a I forget what they're calling it. It's a counter to cover that, those who are left behind. So you're tracking it to that level. Casualties are taken in percentages. So you might look at that and say it's a bit fiddly. It has a lot of charts, and there's 2 die rolls for weather. Well, this had ever-changing weather. I mean, when the British swarmed down from Princeton to hit Washington at Trenton, it felt like George Washington was dialing in the weather. It was unseasonably warm. Remember, when he crossed the Delaware, it was a nor'easter. Like a week later, they have unseasonably warm weather. The road turns to mud. They're covering about 10 miles, and it takes them the entire day. They get down there. Washington's holed up across a small stream, and it's like, we'll wait till the morning. And Cornwallis, the general, said, if you wait, he won't be there tomorrow. They call him the Old Fox. Washington decides, he has his meeting. They said, let's get out of here. The weather freezes back up that night, turns the roads hard. He takes a side road, goes right up, perfect to move the artillery across down the road. Next morning they wake up, pew pew, he ain't there, and boom, 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 off in the distance, and he's attacking Princeton. The weather is changing. It captures that. I mentioned the troop count and the crossings. And also, this guy might get across, this guy might not. When Washington planned this elaborate attack, you go here, you go here, you go here, we'll all meet. Some of the guys couldn't even get across. Some of them got all of their guys across, some of them couldn't. This captures it very, very sim to that detail. A cool mechanic I dug was movement factors into combat. If you're moving 8 spaces, 8 movement points, and you're right next to the enemy, you have a lot of movement to get in that hex. You'll have what's called a prepared attack. If you're a long ways away and you move and you have 1 movement point left and move in, it's called a hasty attack. Multiple rolls for combat. How much did you surprise them? It's factored into weather, the hasty attack, things like this. A lot of charts, but I will say this is good. If you want to get into this game, go out to grognards.com and look this game up. There is a spreadsheet on here. It is invaluable. Forget the charts. The charts take up like the yay much room. I set my laptop up there. Keeps track of all the guys in there. When it comes to battle, there's check marks. Is it snow? Did you get a hasty attack? What die roll did you roll? 3. Boom, there's your results. It makes it so much smoother and easier to keep track. Great example of play on their website. It's not a difficult game. It's just has a lot of stuff in it because it's capturing all of this stuff. And it has there's like an activation system. You get so many points, and it reminds me of Panzer Grenadier, where the colonel can activate the major, who can activate the captain, but the lieutenant can't activate the colonel. There's a chain. Washington can get guys lower than him. Greene can get Ewing, that type of thing. So you coordinate, and also when you do anything with units, you get fatigue. And this is cool because this is I'm just totally geeking out on this stuff. You get these fatigue levels, which will hurt you when you go into combat. And the only way to get rid of them is night turns and not activate. And what this represents is you're not constantly spinning the whole game. Pow, 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 pow. That's what happened in the Trenton 1777 Worthington game. You just had this huge mass that was just sweeping across, hammering every hesh. And I was like, that's not how it happened. And what it does is you attack like Washington at Trenton, then he waited like a week before he started moving on to Princeton. And it gives you that attack, pause, like they were doing in the war. So if you're into this level of history, this game blew me away. If you're, like I said, if you're a casual gamer.
Why do you think map scale is 1 mile point 14?
Detail, man.
0.14?
Yeah, so if you want more on the mechanics of the details, Marco did a great review on this. But anyways, that's my number 4. I was really glad we got this because I've never seen a really good game on the 1777 year. The Hangman is too big of a scale for this. I was really disappointed. It's a great game, but it was very disappointing for this scale. 1777, too light, missed too much. I want this level, and this is what it had. It's not a huge rule book, not overly complicated, but detailed to the amount with the die rolls and stuff. If you love it, great. My number 4.
I'm just gonna, sure a lot of people out there will know it. The ideas of fatiguing units as they move, and I think the actual terms are hasty attacks, prepared attacks. There are also assaults and grand assaults. You said that was 2012?
Yeah.
So they were done before that. That's the core of the great campaigns of the American Civil War series.
Okay.
Is moving for fatigue and movement points affecting what kind of attack can be done. So if you like that kind of stuff, and there are some of the series, there's I think 9 games in the series now, some of them are still available. So if you like that kind of game, and you're right, it's not for the casual gamer.
Yeah, there's a thing, thanks for inspiration from Kevin Zucker. So that's why I was asking our Napoleonics game if you guys played it, because now I'm really interested in trying Zucker's games to see how much of that come from this. But I got to get more Napoleon before I can appreciate it, because I'm too casual of a Napoleonic gamer, but I'm a hardcore geek for American Revolution.
And after our Civil War series that we did, I had to go to MMP and I went and purchased Battle Above the Clouds.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. And I pre-ordered the, they've got the Atlanta, and then they've got the other one on, I want to say Gettysburg.
They might be redoing because they've had
redoing.
Gettysburg.
Yeah, they're
Call it
redoing.
Roads to Gettysburg.
I think it's Roads to Gettysburg 2.
Okay. It's me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my number 4 is Lewis and Clark. You know, the Louisiana Purchase, Lewis and Clark researching the Louisiana Purchase were a big part of the early American history. This game is a race game. Instead of just being one party, one expedition going from St. Louis to the Pacific Coast, you're competing with up to 5 different parties. And this is really a card drafting game, because you can spend your resources to buy cards that will either give you more resources or will enhance your ability. You know, you might be able to move quicker through the mountains. You might be able to trade quicker or more beneficial and better with the Native Americans. It's resource management. You're dealing with all of the Native American tribes as you're moving through. It's a really thinking game. I've got a kind of a loud group when we go to World Board Gaming Championships, and we played this one time, and people were coming by going, "Why are you guys being quiet?" Because you've got to think, you've got to efficiently use. You've only got a hand of 6 or 8 cards. You know, eventually you might have more than that, but you have to really figure out how to use each card, because if I use this card to gather wood, it's not going to be available to do the event later unless you're willing to slow down the progress of your group as you're moving to the Pacific Coast. So Lewis and Clark, I mean, it's good, not an accurate simulation, but it gives you an idea of how difficult, when you read the journals of Lewis and Clark, you know, how difficult it was to do what they did. This game makes you appreciate how hard it was for them to do it. Lewis and Clark, this is my number 4 American game.
Here's a tidbit for you. I don't know if you're aware of this. I did not know this at the time. You know Washington's War. You know the George Rogers Clark card that lets the Americans steal a card from the British? His son is that Clark.
Right.
George, yeah. I went out to Fort Vincennes and learned. I was like, wow, I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right, continuing as we move on, my number 3 would be Freedom. Freedom is another game from Academy Games. It's cooperative. It's got a card-driven element, and it's the Underground Railroad, where you're in a position where you're trying to raise funds and also free the slaves by getting them all the way up into Canada. There are slave catchers, which are run by the system. Everybody is playing together to free the slaves. And your goal is to just effectively move them up further along the path and also be able to fund. There's, 3 different stages of time, I believe, that are shown with historical figures on the cards. This is just the way it's approached, I think, is so effectively done. There was a lot of sensitivity when this first came out because it is a sensitive nature, but it's the Underground Railroad, and it's the freeing of the slaves. It's the abolitionist movement. There's even a book, a compendium that comes along with this that you can get from Academy Games. So it's part of what you just said. It's a way of teaching and playing the history. Very well done. Dexter and I, when I first got this, actually played this together. I'd mentored Dexter, happens to be African American, and I really was asking him too, what's your feel on this? He goes, all right, it seems like a fun game. He actually said it's really strategic and hard. He hadn't played a lot but it is, for a cooperative game, it's actually extremely difficult.
One of the hardest elements to this is the limited stacking, I find, of the counters. So you can't just move whole masses, even if you've got the money, even if you've got the cards, you can't just move whole masses of slaves up there. You really have to run it, well, now I move this, so I can move that, so I can move this, so I can move that, and you've only advanced a little bit. It's just, do the trickles come quickly enough? That to me is what, that's what is the hard part of the game, is figuring out how to keep the trickle going.
And that you can't get every freed slave to Canada.
Right.
There's trade-offs that happen. And I'd seen some people that were, in my opinion, overly sensitive to that, where I was saying that teaches you more about real life than anything else, that even in the midst of this game, there's not only are they tough decisions, but imagine this is a historical game. These were things that real people did to get folks free. And monumental, great game, really pull it off, and I think quite brave in putting it out. I think there would have been a lot of publishers that were like, let's not even touch it. So my number 3, again, I'm not doing this in order of my favorites or anything, just trying to climb up historically.
Chronologically.
Chronologically.
Okay.
My number 3 is about the Civil War and the Anaconda Plan, where they're trying to cut off the ports and the Mississippi River. They got New Orleans, started cutting off the Mississippi, could not get the fortress at Vicksburg. Grant tries to go down, take it from the north, gets a supply line cut by Van Dorn. He tries to keep it closer to the river where he can stay in supply, and there's too much swampland. Confederates build up a nice fortress. He goes so far as to try to dig a canal to take the river around. It felt like Wile E. Coyote when I was at Vicksburg learning all this. And finally comes up with a bold plan to have Admiral Porter run the guns from north to south. He had his army go down the west side of the Mississippi, meet up, use the boats to cross. He is not in supply, swings up goes north and east and hits Vicksburg and tries to assault the city, but the Confederates are dug in. He puts it under siege. I don't remember it was quite a while, like 6 weeks or something. He put that under siege. And that's what caused Lee to go north at Gettysburg, trying to put so much pressure that Grant would relieve the siege and pull troops out there. Both of them fell almost on the same day. That's my number 3 game, is covering this battle of Vicksburg. It is Mississippi Fortress. It is 1990 game, Clash of Arms. Gary Selkirk's the designer. On our Civil War games, I'm not going to put a book with this. I'm not nearly as strong on the Civil War. There's a lot more people that can tell you stuff about Civil War, additional readings. On our Civil War, I had Lee Takes Command number 1, mentioned this series, the Civil War campaign series, and I made a comment. You could substitute any of the games in on my number 1. This is one of those games. I thought when I was first learning, a siege, I kind of boring. You just surround and hold on. No. This, we had a question on Board Game Geek on the War Game Forum. A guy asked, why did he cut his supply? And, some of the people's talking about the swamp and all. And I said, play Mississippi Fortress. It'll become clear as day. You can try to go through the swamp. It won't work. And you will see the genius. I mean, it's daring. It was brilliant and daring why Grant did what he did. It doesn't shoehorn you into it. You don't. That's what I love. You don't have to do it, but you'll see why he did it. And you'll also understand why Joe Johnston had a force over in Jackson, Mississippi, and Davis was very critical of him not going and relieving. And he said, I don't have the force to do it. You can try it. And the game also has a really cool, all these games in series always have scenarios with what ifs. I said I wanted to focus on history, and it's all there. But also, what if Lee, instead of going north, had cut Longstreet's corps out to go help them? Now you can try to relieve it. If you take the town, you win. Otherwise, you have to hold on to certain areas, which is putting under siege for so many turns. There's a track, and if it ever gets open, boom, you're back to start. If you want to know the details of the system, go back and watch the Civil War. I talk about the mechanics of this system, why the battles are so brilliant. This one doesn't focus on the cavalry like the others do. But the system is really slick for Civil War. And I hope that people haven't drove the price of this thing up because of our videos. It drives me nuts. People quit doing that. No. This game needs to be in people's hands.
He mentioned it. You got to buy it. It's driven up.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Except for
Judd.
Yeah, Judd, you're ruining everybody's chance.
Except for this thing's been out since 1990.
You might get it reprinted. You got to look on the high side.
That is true. Oh, gorgeous Rick Barber map. 4 of these games have Rick. I love his maps. He's my favorite artist. And trust me, I've seen these things at this level because of the Vassal module. I made Vassal modules. If you look at the complaints, it's part of why the price is lower on these. These go about $20 to $25, except for the Great Invasion. And usually the comment you see is, doesn't solo, and it doesn't, you could, it's just, you lose a lot because there's a lot of hidden stuff. Couldn't find an opponent. So that's why I made all the Vassal modules. And I had to scan these maps in and blow them up and stitch them together. So I have seen Rick Barber's map almost on the pixel level. And they're just gorgeous. He does lots of Napoleonic and Civil War games. But yeah, I said, these games are pretty reasonable. There are Vassal modules, and one of the guys just wrote and said, hey, would you play Lee Takes Command? I'm like, yes, that's why I made these modules, so I can play people in these things. And when I get to BWBG Con, not going this year, Chris Montgomery and I always pick a different game out and play it. So I don't know if I'm not going this year, not sure about next year, but next time I go, I don't know if it's going to be this or Autumn of Glory, which one we're going to play. But this is way more fun because this isn't just a boring siege, and you see really clearly why Grant did what he did. That's my number 3.
Okay, my number 3. So one of the things about America is democracy, elections. So my number 3 game is 1960, The Making of the President. This is the Kennedy-Nixon election. This is the original Z-Man version. There is a new GMT version out that doesn't make any gameplay changes, mostly graphical changes is mine, but this is the one that I've got. It's card driven. The thing about this one, where it's a little different, is in this game, when you play a card, the opponent's event will happen unless your campaign has enough momentum to keep the other person's event from happening. But you're campaigning across the entire, all 50 states, which is what Nixon really did during the election. He campaigned in all of the spaces. There's an emphasis on, besides campaigning and getting support so that you get the electoral votes, there's also, it focuses on the important issues of the time, civil rights, defense, obviously right before the Bay of Pigs, before the Cuban Missile Crisis, and also on the economy. Some people say it focuses a little too much on the issues, that you end up playing the issues instead of the elections. Maybe that's what you do if you want to win the game, but I like playing the game. This again has, I mentioned in Twilight Struggle the big historical events, the Berlin blockade, the Cuban Missile Crisis. This has historical events, but it's little tiny historical events. It's Nixon banging his knee on a car door and getting his knee infected, so he's off the campaign trail for a couple of weeks. It's Kennedy going down and talking to the Greater Houston Ministerial Alliance to convince them, yes, I'm a Catholic, but when I'm president, I'm gonna be an American before I'm, subject to what the Pope wants me to do. This gets the whole campaign. It's got the first televised debate in it. It's got all of these things. One of the things that people talk about is how serial killers, there are serial killers who will have copies of Catcher in the Rye. Well, this is my Catcher in the Rye because I've got multiple copies of I brought books too. The Making of the President, 1960. This was a Pulitzer Prize winning book on the election and describes many of the events that happened in this. This isn't like his Washington's Crossing. This is a newspaperman's story of what was the campaign like. It's not, intense detail on every element. This is what he saw during the campaign. But 1960, Making the President, is my number 3 game about America.
Very nice. And the exact same 2 designers that did Founding Fathers.
Right.
So,
And we didn't plan the book thing. I didn't tell them I was going to bring any books.
No, you guys.
You pulled
That's how spontaneous we are.
Pulled the first one out and thought,
Stole your thing. Well, I got the idea from you when you pulled that book out last time.
Yeah.
Gunslingers. Wow, I just noticed I got a little damage to my box here. Gunslingers. All right. This came out in 83, I believe. 82. I think I bought it in 84. The idea of capturing a gunfight, in the maps on here are gorgeous. It's an Avalon Hill game. Richard Hamblin. The OK Corral. They've got a bunch of different scenarios that are in there. The interesting thing here is you use cards, and that a gunfight or a turn is 2 seconds, I believe. Yes, 2 seconds of the game.
Player type, pin code.
That's all right. So it may literally be your cocking back the hammer on your single action gun. Or if you fan fire, your accuracy goes all to hell, but you can start shooting a lot quicker. And that's their ability to work in different types of weapons, the Derringer, the shotgun, the sawed-off shotgun, the Winchester. And it's just got a beautiful flavor to it, gorgeous maps. Now here, and you'll draw a card. So the cards that allow you to do actions, you'll also draw a card and look at a different section to resolve those things. Now, I need to play this at BGG. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but he runs it. He's got it. He's got these scenarios he's made up. He does a lot of cool different things because they've even had bar brawls. They've had battles with Native Americans, and there's so many different things you can do, but it is odd. The idea of these turns are 2 seconds, and they're these little microcosms, and you might play the game for an hour and you've traversed 6 minutes.
Right.
If that sometimes. So as a kid, I was in over my head. I learned it. I could solo it, and I would have kids come over, and they would be like, oh, no. I don't want it. What are we doing? And they couldn't even wrap their head around. And again, I was up in the mountains of Colorado, and so it sat on the shelf, or I'd pull the boards out and take a look. I've got to play this when I do get back to BGG. The gentleman that runs these cool little tournaments just puts a lot of love into his scenarios.
Well, I don't know what scenarios he plays. The scenarios you mentioned are in the game.
Yes, I think he makes up some as well. He really does a lot to handle a lot of people. And I wanted to include this because this is the Hollywood, almost spaghetti Western style gunfight with what would be a simulation in the designer's mind of the gunfight.
And the scenarios are historic. Many of the scenarios are historically based, but the way they are resolved is Hollywood.
Right.
Yeah.
So you've got this kind of hardcore sim with this 2-second by 2-second play out and the
So,
use of
have you ever
the
played it?
cards.
I'd like to, but I haven't. It goes for a
I mean,
pretty penny, so you don't have to worry about
it
HAMTAG
works.
effect. It already costs a ton.
I mean, like many of the scenarios, I know we, in one of the previous groups here, we would have the 7-player scenario, 6 people around the poker table, and the bartender off to the side, and like I think they say in the description, and a 5th ace appears. So suddenly everybody starts reacting. And then you've got some that are, out in the wilderness, and the long guns have a factor where you divide the range so that a rifle at long range is much more effective than a handgun. So yeah, it's if you've got, to me, it's the kind of game, if you've got somebody who can drive the game, who knows what's supposed to happen, can say, okay, this is what happens next. This is, because a lot of it is intuitive. A lot of, you've got to, you tell them you've got a single action gun, you've got to cock it, you can take the time to aim it, but if you aim it, other things will happen. You can decide to shoot the gun. Oh, now you've only got, 1 bullet left, so you have to decide if you want to reload. You can poke your head out the window. If you've got somebody who can translate what is happening in the game to the game mechanics, it flows.
Right. Yes.
So,
Yep. Because, okay, I'm going to run. You can tell the guy, I'm going to run and go around that corner, and if I can get there, then I'll reload. And so...
Right.
Yeah,
right.
and it's like, sure, this is all you can do on this turn.
If you do this, because there's walk, run, or sprint.
Yes.
And if you sprint, you can't turn. You're just, yeah.
So when are you guys going to make the Cowtown scenario?
Yeah.
We have out here in Wichita, it was one of the big cow towns like Abilene and Dodge City. We have a thing downtown called Old Cowtown, and it's like restored. I mean, it's very authentic looking, much more than Tombstone, which I've been to, where you walk into the room and they got stuff roped off, and this was a dentist office from that time. And they also have actors who go out and have a big gunfight. So when y'all come out to party with us and play games, definitely worth checking out.
There you go.
Cool.
My turn.
Yes.
Okay, my number 2. If you're going to do Vicksburg, you kind of got to have a Gettysburg game in there, because it was pretty important. High tide of the Confederacy. My number 2, I'll pick it out of this in case there's glare, is Gettysburg, Lee's Greatest Gamble. What got this on my radar is what I believe gets this on a lot of people's radar. Mark Herman puts ratings on games, but doesn't put a lot of comments on it. But if you go to his profile, or as I like to say, go to the book of Mark, chapter 10, rating 10, he put a comment on this game. He put a comment on this. It says, I have just about every Gettysburg game ever published. This is the one I play. And I've heard people comment about this game that they got it based on his comment. Definitely put on my radar, because normally I have this attitude towards a lot of magazine games. This came out in Command Magazine number 17, 1992. Chris Perello, I'd never heard of him, but I guess he owned the magazine for a few years. Made a lot of games too. This one.
He almost went.
What?
Keep going.
It's very... It's really cool. I mean, I see what Mark Herman said about it. It's like, it is really cool. It's not like the other Gettysburg games. I don't have the experience he does with them, but it has some cool features. There's no victory points for Little Round Top and Culp's Hill. It's not trying to shoehorn you into doing what they did. It naturally comes with it. The victory is based on casualties. Lee was there to smack an army around, and you get that through casualties. You also, if you can get your Lee's wagon train off certain roads, one road's worth more than the other, but there's 3 roads. If you can get it through there, it's worth some points. But it's about attrition in this game. And so, yeah, you'll get on Little Round Top because of the bonuses it provides. Or you want to get your artillery up there because it increases range. But it doesn't force you to do it. That was cool. Also, it has a problem with a lot of games. You're not having 3 days of constant fighting. I mean, it took Longstreet a long time to get all those forces over there to attack little round top later in the afternoon. If you look at the third day, they waited a while before they opened up the cannon fire and then pickets charged for like an hour. They weren't fighting from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m. This game captures it, and it reminds me of Mark Simonich's type of games where he does things very simply. He captures elements of what went on in history, but he doesn't do it with a lot of verbiage and charts and details. It's just a really elegant, simple system. Like, oh, that's cool. I'm thinking Ardennes 44 mainly, but there's a commander rating at the start of your turn you roll, and it will tell you, can I move units up to attack the enemy? That's one range. One range, if there's somebody adjacent, I can add to the battle. Another is, I can't do that. And another is, my army's so panicked, there's a chance the other guy can take control of a handful of your units and move them. What that catches is Sickles. If you don't know about him, he was on Little Round Top. He sees Devil's Den, this great formation of rocks, and oh, it looks great. But he goes past his support. Boneheaded move. My daughter and I was just there a couple months ago, and she's like, that guy really was dumb, wasn't he? And I was like, yeah, you can see this too. But, well, you can't make people want to do this because they know it's stupid. And you can shoehorn it in. He must go down here to get something. No. If the other guy takes control of your guy, he can do something. And stuff happens. People do stupid stuff in battles, and it's in there. One die roll captures all of that. And it's like so elegant and simple. And then it's also brigade on brigade. So it's not a killer stack or zone of control chess. There's no zones of control. There's no, I'm bringing in 3 groups here and I'm going to get the odds in my favor. If you attack with the group, you have to roll against your commander's ability to coordinate. And if you get it, first guy attacks with a bonus. Next guy attacks with a bigger bonus. Third guy will do his individual attack with an even bigger bonus. But if the first guy drives him off, second and third guys wasted their effort. Hey, we're all coordinating going in here, but they scattered really quickly. And it's not like, oh, you ran, I'll turn here. It doesn't work that way. And when you're reading the rules, there's little boxes right beneath the designer notes. And he's like, here's what I'm aiming for in this. So it's really neat as you're reading. It's like, it helps explain the game. It's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Games are not very difficult at all. And it's so smooth. And like I said, it reminds me of Simonich. And when I played, like, this is the coolest Gettysburg game. I haven't played near as many as Mark Kerman, but this is by far the coolest, most realistic style Gettysburg game I've played without, it doesn't go overboard with thousands of counters and tons of rules and takes days to play. It's a fairly short game.
Did you make a vassal module for it yet?
Here's the thing about it. This is sweet. This is my story on this game. Got this on a pay it forward. Went crazy. Yeah, I got it. 2 days later, my daughter and I go to Gettysburg. I bring this with me. This doesn't have a sealed top. The counter bag ended up on an airplane. And I'm like, well, I could probably get replacement counters made at about $30.
Well, I have counters. You can borrow mine if you wanted to scan them in.
No, I actually bought another copy. When I read the rules, I said, this game is, wow, that game is all that. I must do this. I go on to BGG to say, okay, I can make a vassal module if nothing else. No, the counter scans suck. So I get this copy unpunched. Well, when you get it unpunched, now I stick it on their 300 DPI scan. I get all the detail. I can make a vassal module. It's one of those, I don't do them as much as I used to, but if there's interest in this, I can do this one. This one would take that long to make.
I'd play that one.
It's low counter density too.
It is.
Okay. So my number 2 is Founding Father. We've already talked about it. I really don't have anything to add to it. It's good history. It plays quickly. The mechanics are clean. The one thing I'll say, you mentioned my cheat sheet for this game. And what I've actually got is there's one on how to play the game. And like Judd has said, I mean, I've used it many times to teach and it works well. On the back side of that one, I put the Bill of Rights. Because it's not part of the original Constitution, but it's an important part of American history. There's also another one out there that shows, like we talked about, that's why I was ready to address it when you were asking about it. But, you know, it's the possible alternative wording of the Constitution. And there's another one out there. The actual words on the little plaques you're voting on are very tiny, really don't impact, because what you're really doing is the character of the words, whether it favors big states over small states, whether it favors big federal government over bigger states, anti-federalist So the words aren't important when you're playing the game, but I captured all of the words. So you can see what the differences are that they're trying to get across. So
And
this
your copy's seasoned. That thing's been through some
yeah,
houses.
yeah.
Look at that.
And it's made a few trips
Yes.
and things like
You
that.
can just tell.
And there's stories about serial killers who like Catcher in the Rye. So this is the other one where I've got multiple copies of Miracle at Philadelphia by Catherine Drinker Bowen. This one talks about there's nothing, like Judd mentioned, there's not a lot captured firsthand. There's James Madison's notes, but not a lot was captured firsthand about it. But she kind of explains what's going on. And, it's like when the convention takes some time off, she explained what's going on in the rest of the country, why the country is evolving, why the colonies are evolving into the country after the Articles of Confederation. So this is another book. I've got multiple copies of this one. So it's one that I've read multiple times about founding fathers. You can borrow that copy because I've got it. I think 3 more.
I will do that.
And the 1960 game, when the first year, when the 1960 game came out, I ran the tournament at the World Board Gaming Championships, and I found and gave away, I think, like 6 or 7 copies of the making. I could find that many copies here around town, and now whenever I go somewhere else, I go to another place and they've got a half-price books. If they've got a copy of Making of the President 1960, I've got enough Miracles at Philadelphia right now, but I'm running short on 1960, so I'll buy another copy. So
Something cool on this historical note. I have this series of lectures, college lectures from Joseph Ellis, Pulitzer Prize-winning historian. Him
Founding
and Gordon Wood,
Brothers.
yeah, yes. And I had those things on endless loop. I probably listened to them 30 or more times, just endless on my 14 lectures, starting in 1763, passage of the Stamp Act, up to 1800. And he's saying he called that the end of the American Revolution because the transfer of power from the opposition party, and it was clean, it was bloodless, and it justified everything they fought for and self-government by the people, for the people, of the people. But something he said in there, he said when the American Revolution was going on, if you took the population of Virginia, it was about modern day equivalent of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And he said, imagine going into Wilkes-Barre and finding George Washington, or somebody like of this caliber, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, Patrick Henry, in one town. And his part of it, he said, was, okay, you had this collection of guys at the right time, at the right place in history, because you had the Enlightenment going on. So they were open to the ideas of Adam Smith, and Montesquieu, and John Locke, Adam Smith, guys like this. And also because there was no titled aristocracy in America, and they were separated by an ocean and the European influence, America was open to talent. And he said if Benjamin Franklin, if Benjamin Franklin had been born in England and lived his whole life there, he would have been a printer. George Washington would have probably made major in the British Army. Alexander Hamilton would have never escaped poverty. I mean, he was probably the smartest of all of the founding fathers, but he would have never got past that in Britain. But he comes over here and look at what he does. So because they were there and they had all these radical ideas they were able to try out on self-government, and they were apart from the European influences, and they could bring in the talented people, boom, look at what you got. And it's just really remarkable. Highly recommend that series if you can find it. I'll probably write in the quote. I'll put a link in the quotes if you want that lecture.
Down and on your deal when we're done, and I'll
watch the videos. Oh yeah, I need to do that.
Yeah, well, I'll do it. I'll get it from you before we leave. All right, my number one, again, not in any particular order. I know we're going chronological, but this is important to me. Automobile. Now, Greg is a master teacher of this. This has got some pretty crunchy kind of Euro gamey.
Kind of Euro. It's a Euro.
That to me is the ultimate and cleanest Euro game.
That's my favorite
Wow,
Euro
it's
game.
huge for me.
Right.
So-
Okay, your favorite
Right.
Euro game. All right, sorry, I shouldn't have said kind of Euro game. I see a lot of theme in this still when I play, which is why I got this. So here's how I'm introduced to Martin Wallace. My dad, who passes in 2008, October 2008, was a huge car guy. And I'd just gotten him into some Carcassonne and some things. And I saw this, I think via BGG, that Martin Wallace, through the Tree Frog line, was doing these subscriptions. This was going to be the first one in his second run. Waterloo might have been his last in the first run. And I think I even jotted down, I don't know if Automobile, then Last Trains of Wensleydale, God's Playground, and then Gettysburg were in the second run. So I said, you know what, I'm going to just subscribe to all of these. I really wanted this one. And the whole plan had been, this is going to be hugely accessible to Dad. The whole idea that you're moving through the advancement of the cars is really what I knew. I, of course, didn't understand kind of how it was going to work. Now, the order's placed, he passes before it ever fulfills, and when it first comes in, I was kind of like, wow, I looked at it, but I kind of set it aside because I had a plan for it, and that plan was not going to happen. You, I think, showed up, brought your copy in, and I thought, okay, I need to still learn how to play it. And as far as Euro games go, it was really, this is one of those great games where I would think about it a lot after playing a game. Or we would play a game and immediately say, how many people want to play again? And maybe one person pulls out and there's someone else waiting to jump in. And it's one of those games where on occasion I would be like, okay, I've realized we're 3/4 through. I'm not going to be able to catch Greg or Marshall in this case, but why in the heck hasn't Greg closed down that old factory over here? He's producing and he's taken so many lost cubes. And then then I'm in the middle of playing my thing and trying to still do all right, but I'm watching saying, is he going to close it now? He didn't close it now. And then how's he mitigating? And then I come back and I try that strategy because I figured out, I can't even remember now, but I was like, let me give that a shot. And then I'm able to experience it. And it's one of those games that you're able to do that. And in that game I happened to do it, August was in. Right. And August is a great player in this, and he keeps telling me, you need to close it. And I'm like, I'm going to leave it because I'm now seeing what he had done.
That it can work the other way.
Yeah. And so it's very, very fun. Again, I'm going to point, you've got a little helper guide on this one as well, a teaching guide, a teaching sheet on BGG. Please use that.
So if you're ever looking, now that they've been mentioned a few times, if you're looking for them, the ones I prepare are called one-page automobile or one-page Founding Fathers, even though the Founding Fathers one is printed front and back. So those are what mine are called. Or I think you can find it by going to the contributions. You can see what files I've prepared. I've never mentioned it. My BGGCon username is GS in KS for Kansas. And I think the last time I looked, I've got like 28 of them out there.
Yeah, they're great. And
but this is just, so you haven't actually, this is actually about building and running factories through the early evolution of automobiles. And like, when I teach it, the first thing I tell people is the point of this game, it just goes 4 turns. And the object of it is to have the most money at the end of the game. And there's only one way to make money. That's by producing and selling cars. There's a lot of ways to lose money. If you produce too many, if you don't produce enough, if you don't support your distributors that are out there, if you keep factories open too long. So there's a lot of ways to lose money, but the main point of this game is building factories, building and selling cars. But like I said, to me, it is my favorite Euro game. I mentioned that I've run 1960 at the World Board Gaming Championships. I've run this one, Automobile, several times at the convention.
And it's a piece of Americana in terms of that era. The production of the cars going from these beautiful luxury items that are handmade into, although you don't always get up into the Model A's and all these things, but the whole idea of that capitalism even was, I'm going to build something And it could be economy, it could be luxury. What do they call the middle one? I'm not even remembering.
I think just mid-class.
Mid-class. And then I've got to decide how many to produce, and then what can I sell, and how do I build these in the factories. And the cool ability where you can pick up the main designers of Ford and I'm going to
Billy Durant, Charles Kettering,
and they have different
Alfred P.
powers that
Sloan
allow
of the
you-
Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, right?
You can kick off loss cubes, and you can do these different things to mitigate what you're doing. Just so it's a good Americana and a pleasure, and it's close to me for the reasons I've stated.
Well, it's hilarious. My best friend's an industrial engineer, so he's very much into lean manufacturing, the removal of waste. And Alfred Sloan's system goes completely against that. Sloan is pretty much the enemy of industrial engineers. He's of talent, he's kind of an amateur. He come up with generally accepted accounting principles. And he's fairly talented for what he come up with, but his stuff, if you ever see your company do something stupid, it's probably based on his principles. I mean, building up inventory right for the quarter to make your books look good. Anyways, so yeah, and I've read in books, Bill Waddell, Norm Modak, guys like this, and yeah, so I was like, Sloan, baby, I'm always griping about Sloan. Well, so when I play this game, I'll get stuck in a point, and I have to get old Sloan to get rid of those lost cubes. And I'll take a picture. I'll have all these lost cubes next to his picture, and I'll take a picture, and then I'll remove him, and it's like, I hate Sloan, but he's so useful. It's kind of like him doing counting tricks. And my buddy will play this. Well, he loves this game. He'll come and play with my wife and I. And boy, if I ever take Sloan, sell out. Of course, he'll take him too. But we love to give each other grief about that guy.
Yeah, there are limited ways to get rid of cube.
Yes.
To cut your losses, but that's one of them.
Yeah, when you got a pile of them, he's quite useful.
So it's kind of interesting. I mentioned at the very beginning that I considered doing a baseball game because baseball is American. Mm-hmm. And I wrote down, and I considered doing Gunslinger, the Wild West game, and automobile. And I thought, well, I just won't mention it at the beginning because I'm going to go on and talk about my game. So you had the same ideas for America as I actually had. So
very nice.
Okay, so I've covered American Revolution, Civil War. And really, I think the most important single event in American history is the American Revolution. I mean, other than if you don't have it, you have no America. Look at what come from it, the Constitution. They'd never done republics beyond like Italian city-states and Swiss cantons. Montesquieu said it couldn't happen over a big republic, and it happened. Colonies that never broke off from the mother countries like that. So for that whole thing, like I mentioned, 1763 to 1800, wow, but none of it counts if you don't win the war. And there's not really a good game on writing the Declaration of Independence. And like I said, the one on the Constitution just wasn't sim enough for me. So I'm going for American Revolution. None of this happens without primus inter pares, George Washington, who he wins the war, he lays down his sword. Look at what happened in Russia. You get Lenin, you get Mao over in China, you get these bloody revolutions. The American Revolution didn't consume her own children. France, you get the guillotine, you get Napoleon, you end up with these despots. Washington wins the war, lays down his sword. He's the American Cincinnatus. He also was smart enough early in the war to understand the big picture. I don't have to win this. I just have to not lose this. And that seems quite plain. Robert E. Lee never figured that out, or Gettysburg would have been different. Napoleon didn't figure that out when he went into Russia. Guys who were considered brilliant tactical people did not get the big picture like he did. So, in honor of Washington, I just gave it away. My number one game is...
Right, I don't think we were surprised at this point.
Is what I think's the greatest
I'm sure it was
game.
going to be Lincoln.
Yeah. Greatest game ever made, in my opinion. It always goes between hands and seeing this, but this week it's this. Now, I read about Washington, and I'm all back in, Washington. This game, 2010, it was designed by the man who's first in war games, first in peace games, and first in the hearts of consumers everywhere, Mark Herman, His Excellency. I've mentioned this game a time or two, card-driven game, re-implementation of We the People. Fixed a few of the warts, since that was the first one where British can have hands that nothing, where they just can't do anything. He fixed some of those problems in that, sped it up, So it makes a good tournament game. I mean, Greg and I play like 2 hours or an hour and a half, depending on when the war ends goes. The thing about American Revolution, I said I'm going for sim, and there's people out there, this isn't sim enough for me. Here's an example. Whatever you think about coin, you can't deny it gives you a way to play games that would be about impossible to play otherwise by coming up with that clever mechanic of how they do things. American Revolution's hard. It's not like the Civil War where I go down here and I hit this objective. See, the British were always looking for an objective. If I can capture Philadelphia, we'll win the war. If we can get New York, Charleston, Boston. What they never figured out was the center of the American Revolution was the Continental Army itself. And that's why Washington figured out my job is to keep these guys alive and keep them going. So it's hard to make. You don't have the classic fronts. And where this game really gets it in some ways, I said there's 3 things I really consider key to an American Revolution strategic level game. One is the events. I mean, you know, Declaration of Independence, what's it going to do? Nathan Hay, all these different things. George Rogers Clark, like we talked about, it's in here. The Battle of Vincennes, very cool, by the way. All these different events come into this game. Also, you got to have Washington's Fabian tactics. Like I said, he figured out after the Battle of New York where they almost lost it all. He was holed up, and if Howe had the will of Grant and the understanding of this will win me the war, he would have went in to Brooklyn Heights and taken huge casualties and ended it there. Washington figured out, and he wouldn't have put his army at risk. Even at Monmouth, the biggest battle of the whole Revolution, he only put a portion of his army up against the British rear guard. He always kept them out. The only time he risked it all was Princeton and Trenton because he had to. So with the escapability of Washington and Greene in this game, you capture it. But in an American Revolution game, this is what's so hard for so many of them to capture. How do you make a game that makes you want to attack Trenton? It's strategically worthless. And I'm not going to waste that. That's a waste of my time. I'm going for the big picture. He does it in here. He doesn't do it for the same reasons to keep the will of the people up. It's to push the French meter up. So it's not necessarily the reason why, but you get the design for effect result that you want. You fight what Washington did. I will commit to battles I can win where the odds are in my favor. Also, Nathaniel Greene down south, he lost every battle. I mean, even Guilford Courthouse, he lost the battlefield. But when he took over down south, Britain had Georgia and South Carolina and were getting ready to go into North Carolina. By the time he got done with them, he had pushed them all the way back to Savannah and Charleston. How do you lose every battle and take all the ground? This game has it. It's done through that political control mechanism. It's very abstract. And what's funny was one time I thought, the whole thing about Washington and Trenton, that'd be kind of cool if he put a strategic will in here like Empire of the Sun and For the People. And then I realized, you know what? This game came out after those two. He knew about it. Mark Grumman knows a thing or two about making a game, and it hit me, yeah, it wouldn't work as good as this system. And this is the best system I have seen for how to capture the political part of the game, because that's the third aspect you have to have. The military is there to achieve a political victory. It wasn't, see, Britain was always looking to smash them, we can win this thing, and that wasn't the key to the war. And this captures those ideas. It does it so well. This is the better than all the. I haven't played them all. I've played most. I haven't played the SPI, and I haven't played the coin game yet. It's coming up in a couple of months. But I played the block game. I've played Give Me Liberty, 1776. I played a lot of these things, and none of them, the Miranda magazine, none of them come close to capturing as many things as this captures.
I got a Stratego version.
I haven't played it. Oh, no!
Stratego American Revolution.
So that's why.
It loses a little bit in some of them.
Yeah.
And what's funny was, I don't know if I've ever told the story. The first time, when I was new to Board Game Geek 2009, I got We the People. I'd read about it, got the game, played with Greg. I was going crazy for this game. And back when Geek Gold was very hard to get, I had accumulated enough to get me a micro badge. So it just had Judgments and a little We under it for We the People, the little scroll. I'm looking around on We the People, and I just got into games and thinking they're all dead except for this memoir game. Nobody plays war games anymore. We the People's 15 years old. And I see designed by Mark Herman. I didn't know him from Adam. And it's highlighted. And I thought, what's that highlighted? And I click it and it says, this person is a user. And I thought, this game's been out of print 15 years. This guy is not on Board Game Geek, whatever. Oh well, I had this belief that if somebody does something cool, you need to let them know. Tell them how much you appreciate their hard work. So I thought, I'll write this guy. He'll never see it. Maybe I'll get lucky and it'll trigger his email account. And I dropped him a line. I was like, I just got We the People. This is the coolest game. I love how you have Washington's escapability. And like, if you wonder if you know this game, Charleston, you don't get the British naval advantage. The reason why is it had high sandbars and it was hard to maneuver. And they tried this earlier on the attack on Fort Moultrie. And I'm geeking out on these little details and why Arnold's the only guy that can go between Maine and Quebec. And I was like, it's got this, and this is so cool, and I just love your game. And anyways, and I thought, he'll never see it.
Restraining order.
Yeah, no. I just kind of told him I really love this game.
It was before he had checked, online to see.
He flagged that one, but it was pre-restraining order.
No, but next day I get an email back from him. He's like, I'm glad you enjoy it. Thanks. I was like, this guy's actually on here? So anyways. Beginning of a beautiful friendship. Anyways, no, but it's a stalker.
Yeah. All right.
So, anyways, my favorite game of all time, my favorite topic. You got the 7th greatest man in history making a game about the 4th greatest man. That's why, it's just epic in a box. Oh, and books. I have never found a really good 1-volume compilation of the American Revolution. Avoid Almost a Miracle. I would only use that book to start fires with.
Well, you shouldn't have said its name.
No, you can read it if you want at your own risk. But this is 2. It doesn't cover all, but it covers a lot. They're both by John Buchanan, The Road to Valley Forge and The Road to Guilford Courthouse. This starts with the Siege of Boston and goes all the way up to Monmouth. And this one is all about what happened in the South, which is never covered. I call this America's first Civil War. And that's a lot of cool events in Washington's war. It was neighbor against neighbor in this one. And it covers all of it, narrative style of writing. Very slick. Love these 2 books. Like I said, it won't cover it all, but it covers the vast majority to where you will get a lot of the feel for what's going on. Anyway, so that's my number 1 and books to go with it.
Okay, so I'm going to move up a little bit in history because my number 1 is For the People, also by Mark Herman. This is actually the old box. This is my old Avalon Hill version. I do have my GMT version, but I thought I'd show this because some people haven't seen this box lately. The reason why I picked that as number 1, I know he isn't everyone's cup of tea. I know some people have a problem with him. But there's a quote from Shelby Foote in the Ken Burns Civil War documentary series where he said, any understanding of this nation has to be based, and I mean really based, on an understanding of the Civil War. So that's why, to me, this is an important, this is my number 1 game on America. Now, when we did our Civil War version, our Civil War episode, I picked Rebel Raiders as my number 1 because I think that is to me, that is a more enjoyable game. Plays a little quicker. I like what it does to balance out the Navy, but this one here is the game that tells me about, it's a card-driven game, but this tells me about the military action. It's kind of like what Judd said, the military action having a political result, because the driver for all of this is strategic will. And so you find out why, in this game, until they really get going. I mean, the Union is just hanging on, and you see why things like the what was the name of the ship? The Trent. All I could think of was Slidell and Mason. But why the Trent was important, and why the Pook turtles were important to get the amphibious modifiers along the Mississippi, and why Lee and Morgan decided they needed to raid into the North in order to hurt the strategic will. So this one really, to me, tells the story of the Civil War, even in a way that Rebel Raiders doesn't, because of the pieces that it does abstract. And there's such, again, in the Civil War episode, I mentioned that the Civil War is it's more of a personal war. The personalities are so important, and this one has a lot of emphasis on the generals who fought the war. So to me, this is my #1 game about America for the people. And that's it.
I love this list. This is really neat. I mean, because when I picked my kind of theming of it, I thought, well, you know, but you can tell where you're passionate, some passion coming in. So
It's good.
neat. All right.
What are yours? Put them in the
Yeah,
comments.
put your list. We've been getting a lot of guys and gals, I would assume, putting their top 5s in there. Some going crazy and throwing 10.
5.
Thinking you're
5.
breaking
You'll find out
rules.
how much we suffer.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, do 5. It's a lot harder to pick your 5. All
All
right.
right.
HAMTAG.
HAMTAG, we're out of here.
See you
ya.
guys. Hey, okay, Patreon. So what is Patreon? It's a way for fans who like video content, in this case YouTube content, to then support the creator, which in this case is me. If you go to patreon.com, you just go in there, search up Bonding with Board Games, you'll find my page. On that page, there's multiple different tiers. You can donate and you can cap how much. So the lowest tier is $2 per video, but you could cap that at $2. So that means even if I put out, I doubt I'll ever put out 10 videos. Let's be honest, if I put out 4 in a month, I'm doing good. That's once a week, and I don't have time to even learn that many rules. But let's just say I put out 4 videos in a month. If you donated $2 and capped it at $2 per video or $2 per month, you're only going to donate 2, no matter if I put out 4 videos, 2 videos, 25 videos, you'll still be at $2. Now on there, if you put no max and I put out 4 videos, $2, $4, $6, $8 is what you would have donated if I put out 4 videos and you didn't cap it. Now I do have extra tiers. Inside those tiers, I've built in some, there's some things with Lens, which is just where you can use your iPhone or smartphone and you can do little 30-second clips on, hey, sneak peeks, or this is what I'm getting ready to review, or this is what just showed up, whatever. There is, trying to think of my other tiers. The bigger ones are, there's a challenge coin. Let me show you. There's a challenge coin. So like for the whiskey show, we have challenge coins. This happens to be the Patreon one for the whiskey show. We have all these challenge coins that the fans get as they support, or they can go in and buy. Now, I didn't want to have a retail store or anything of that nature. I don't have time to really manage all that, so I just got a tier where you can get a Patreon coin. I haven't even done the design yet, but I'll work up the design if we get some folks that come on there. I also have a possibility, a tier with a coin and a shirt. You'll see all that in there. Ask any questions you want in there. The whole idea is, quite honestly, if I'm going to keep putting out content, I want to be motivated to do it, and an economic incentive helps that. And when you have fans that are willing to put their dollars behind how much they like a show to be, or the content of a show, that also gives positive feedback on the other side. Let's see, the kind of shows I'll continue to do for sure are the reviews as they come in. I personally love the interview shows. I love all the different interview shows, and I've got a couple folks that I've reached out to that I'd like to interview that haven't been on the show yet, and some other past ones that want to keep coming on. HAMTAG would be the big question. That's my most popular segment on the show. I don't have total control over that because Greg and Judd are the other 2 co-hosts on that. So I can't promise that that'll be there. But I just finished editing this show that you watched, and then came and shot this video. And I was laughing and chuckling as I watched along, the facial expressions, and it brought back a lot of good memories. So my intention, as long as they're willing, is to have them over, and we'll at least try to get a few more shows shot. Again, I don't know how long that segment will go. Again, just watching and editing the version, I was chuckling along the way. And I think we're such a nice, diverse set of personalities that it's, heck, if it's fun for me to watch and I was on the thing and I'm editing it, editing can be a little boring. And if I'm chuckling while I'm editing, that tells me that's still really good content. So I will work toward that. We'll see what kind of support we get here, because I got to be honest, my time is limited, and I plan on continuing to put out videos, and I just don't know how much of that content will come out. So again, that's why Patreon is set up I've set it up for the per video, and you can make the donation as low as $2 a month. I mean, that's it. See you guys. More to come.